Somebody asked about automation. Are you, I know various guys have their different methods for it. Are you a clip gain? Are you in volume automation at the sort of post fader at the end of the chain? Do you have different ways you like to do that? What's your automation vibe?
Yeah, so automation again is a thing that happens in different steps. So like if I'm cleaning up a vocal, like I haven't started mixing the vocal, but I'm just going through and cleaning up, I'll use clip gain. Because the reason is, if I were to start doing automation before I started to level my vocal and do that stuff, it would be hard to move my fader with automation, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like I do it in a more in a logical way. I don't even know how to explain it, but the clip gain.
Well, it's part of the gain stage, right? It's like
part of the gain stage, but I could do it with the automation in the very beginning. But then if I want to level my output of my vocal, I can't do it because now I have automation, so I have to go and move the whole line. So that, for example, is the reason why I use clip automation before I've done that. Once I've mixed the vocal and now I'm just kind of going through and automating some of the lines to be a little lower, then I'm using actual automation, which is the output of all of these plugins. You know what I mean? And when I do like, if I do a vocal down, for example, like if I have the vocal mixed and I'm like, oh, the vocal's just a little too loud, I won't go to the entire line and bring it down. I'll go to the last plugin, which is usually a compressor, the C2, and I'll just use that tiny little gain knob to kind of gain it down a little bit or up or whatever it needs to be. But I use the last plugin to output essentially.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the things that I hear from you and I do as well, and I think a lot of people can learn is things like when we're talking about harshness, there isn't one go-to tool. It's usually a lot of things, and the way that you get good at this job, whether it's mix engineer, whether it's producer, whatever it is being familiar with all the tools so you can use them in combination for whatever's right for this particular vocal. And even if you're working with the same person a lot, which you're not now, you're mixing lots of different things. But even if you're working with the same person, different vocals, different songs, different,
they change different keys. I mean, people's vocal registers have different frequencies in different registers, you know what I mean?
And so there's situations where like sibilants, the S's and T's and things, it might be you want to use a little saturation and multiband compression. It might be a de-esser. It might be just clip gaining it down a little bit, because as soon as you start using a de-esser, it starts to sound a little bit like there's a lisp on the, like there's all kinds of different ways to do it, and it's worth learning all of them so that you can use them in tandem.
And then also knowing, because you know all these different ways now, like obviously I could use a de-esser. Sometimes the S will be so prominent that I'll actually use the Pro Q to find the frequency and then just put it in dynamic mode.
Yep.
And so okay, boo, I got it a little bit. Okay, it sounds a little better. It still has a little bit. Let me use the de-esser now with it. But knowing all these things, and that's another thing, like a multiband and a soothe for me, I know when I need to use one versus the other. They do pretty much the same thing. But sometimes it's not a particular place that the vocal is abrasive. It's kind of just overall. So I'll use the soothe and kind of just dial the whole vocal a little bit. And then, oh, there's one pocket more I'll pull up. I use this Sonics G Dynamics thing. Hold on, let me look for it. I absolutely love this thing. The Sonics Oxford Dynamic EQ. So that I do for very subtle things. It's usually top end stuff. For my low end dynamics, I'll use a different plugin, but for my top end stuff, I'll use Soothe and then this Sonics Dynamic, and it's very slight. And it's usually the vocals just kind of right over the edge. That's what I'm always dealing with, is like something being just a little too much like this. Let me dial that back. A little less like that. It's these, as you get to the end of the mix, you're just dialing these little tiny things in.
I think that's something also that I remember the first time I did one of these with Baines, and he was talking about his vocal plugin setup, and there were like 12 vocals, and it was kind of like, holy shit, I'm sorry, 12 plugins. It's like 12 plugins, holy shit. But it's like, okay, this one is reducing a little, like a dB just on S's, and this one is doing a little bit of rounding, and this one has they're all very, very subtle.
And they're doing
you can do very extreme things, and extreme things are great too, but like oftentimes what we're talking about here is you can do a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and the way they add up just kind of sounds right. And that's just exactly a function of experience.
It's mixing is 1,000 different decisions being made, right? Dun, 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 dun. And those 1,000 decisions, or however many mix moves you made, are what makes up just this 2-track mix, right? That's all mixing is. It's not like, oh, all I did was just do this. It's so many moves. I mean, like on Industry Baby, that could have been easily 1,000 or more moves. I mean, like dealing with all that shit. But all those little moves, and I take it little by little. I work on this, then I work on that. I'll be ADD, I'll be working on the hook, and then I'll not do the backgrounds on the hook. I'll go to the verse lead, and I'll do the verse lead. I'll get all the leads sounding good. Then I'll start to bring in backgrounds. It's like, it's this whole process that happens. It's like watching a movie versus a TV show. Like the TV show is just like, all these things are happening. Little things, and they make up the whole season. It's like, it's weird.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It's lots of small little moves to make up the whole, and not one of them is necessarily going to make or break it, but it's the accumulation of all of them.
It's the accumulation. It's a compounding interest. It's fucking crazy how it happens.